I keep my thumb on the fine-tuned dial anyway, like I can scrub the strangeness off with a quarter turn. The needle trembles, flirting with the red, then slides back into the soft hum where the air tastes like dust and ozone. The dome above my window wets itself with condensation. A slow drip ticks onto the sill and disappears into the cracked sealant. When the ventilators change speed, the floorboards under my stool vibrate. A polite earthquake that rattles my mug and shivers the glass. It's 2:30 a.m. in a city that forgets what quiet is supposed to be, and yet... "Joe," the radio whispers. Not through speakers, but through the metal in the room, through the wire in my teeth. "Joe, stop pretending you can't hear me." I could argue, but it would be a lie. I hear it the way I hear my own pulse, an outline of myself inside the noise. My name lands exactly where a command would. Not a shout. A touch. "Cute," I say aloud to the empty room. But we don't start with names on a first call. Static answers, a spatter of white to rinse the intimacy down the drain. I roll my shoulders until my neck pops and reach for the attenuator. Half a notch. The ghost of a breath sharpens. Another half. The air hums in a harmonic that makes the hair on my arms lift like I'm a field of reeds, and something just ran through me. Either somebody can see me, I mutter, or I'm talking to a very well-mannered silence again. The well-mannered silence purrs. Somewhere behind the wall, one of my old transformers clicks its tongue. I switch out a coil on the fly. Practice makes blistered fingers. Then, thumb the mic button and lean in, close enough to fog the grill. "If you know my name," I say, careful with the shape of it, "at least confess how you pronounce the O." Nothing. Then the tiniest drop in pitch, like a hand lowering over my crown. "J. O." It shouldn't mean anything. It still lands like a warm coin under my tongue. Not bad. I try for dry. My voice comes out more curious than I like. Now try vowels that aren't mine. The oscillator ticks one step. My heart matches it without asking permission. Below the window, the city under the dome simmers in its own weather. The lower sectors blink their brittle neon and throw up the occasional plume of steam like a factory whale spouting. Not that I know what a whale sounds like. I collect sounds I've never heard and make friends with their shapes. Sometimes it's enough. The news channel left on a muted monitor scrawls text across a presenter's mouth. I nudge the volume with the back of my knuckle and let her voice bleed into the room. Officials are advising caution in the lower quadrants after a spike in alpha-related incidents. Sources cite an unknown audio trigger acting on instinct centers. Patrols will continue through the night. I turn it lower again, not because I'm scared, but because the word unknown makes my larynx itch. I don't think about alphas much. People ask if it's lonely up here. I tell them it's quieter than pretending to be heard. I shut off the monitor entirely, and let the static come back like a tide. The dial under my thumb drifts towards 7.13, as if it's a magnetized rail. That's new. Most nights I have to court a frequency with hours of patience, coax it like a grumpy cat from under a bed. Tonight the cat is already sitting in my lap, kneading claws through my shirt, purring my name. "Joe," the signal says again, the O rounder, as if licking its lips on the way out. "Okay," I say, and breathe into the mic. The levels jump like a flock of small birds. Startled, tidy. "Who are you?" The hum leans in and then, as if embarrassed by its own eagerness, steps back into blankness. I hear the room again, the hiss of the coffee machine warming on the same line. As the backup transmitter, the whisper of the vent as the dome shifts moisture. I press my cheekbone to the cool metal frame. The glass of the window shows me my reflection. Cheek hollowed by the angle, eyes too bright. A smear of grease at the corner of my jaw. I've been meaning to scrub for 3 days. A map of old bands and new notes plaster the wall behind me, edges curled, annotated in pencil and dull red pen. The top one says, Noise Cartography, Upper Spine, Q3. I've been charting where noise lives and what shapes it takes for long enough to make a religion out of it. I wait. It's not patience so much as respect. Sound is a creature. You don't chase it with heavy feet if you want it to show you where it sleeps. The coffee machine spits a sudden gout of foam that splashes my thumb. Ow. I glare at it. I know. Today the broadcast isn't about you. A final petulant hiss, and the machine settles. The room smells like bitter rain and hot copper. My throat opens without me telling it to, and I hum 3 notes, letting them ride my breath until the edges of the tone snag. On the room's imperfections. The dent in the left speaker cone. The cup ring under the scope. The crack in the window seal. The pitch slides up and down microscopically, the way fingers test a scar. The scar hums back. That's when I feel it. My pulse feeding into the loop feeding back into me. Like listening down a long hallway, and realizing the footsteps are yours. Like stepping toward a mirror, and catching someone else arriving first. Okay, I say, because you have to say something to keep the world from being only feeling. That's uncanny. The little screen to my right blinks to life with a motion alert, shaft cam, mid-level. A long shadow crosses the frame, slender and sure, not in a hurry because people who know where they're going never are. The silhouette pauses near the maintenance landing, the angle of the head suggesting someone counting screws in a grate. There's a kind of attention that announces itself even in black and white pixels. It looks like that. Do I have company at 2:30? I ask the room, because admitting it to the air feels less like admitting it to myself. The camera stutters, goes gray for a moment, and then cleans. Shadow gone. Joe, the radio says, mild as a heartbeat. I know, I answer. And for some reason I lower my voice. I hear you. I dial the gain down and swap out the coil again. Less because it needs it than because my hands want occupation. The switchboard studs little electric kisses into my fingertips when I brush them. In the corner, a half-built dampener bracelet glints. Metal and rubber with a homemade filter puck soldered to the inside curve. It's not pretty, but it helps when the hum climbs through my bones and won't let me sleep. When I wear it, I can almost pretend I'm a person who likes breakfast. My stomach chooses that exact moment to remind me it hasn't seen breakfast in 14 hours. Fine, I tell it, and go to pour coffee. The radio breathes with me while I do it, which is another new. On some nights, the air in the room and the air in my chest agree to an uneasy truce. Tonight they are married. I pour too fast, overshoot the cup, and the coffee machine, vindicated, spits a final dollop of foam directly at my knuckles. Sorry, I say to the machine, because we have an understanding, and then I say, what are you? To the frequency. Because we don't. Static furls and unfurls like a cat's tail. On the other side of the city, a siren pulses a warning pattern. I wonder if the patrols are running hotter than usual, if the uniforms taste metal in the air and don't know why. The headlines will say what they always say, stay calm. Report anomalies. Do not engage. I should follow my own advice and stop engaging with a voice I can't explain. Instead, I set the mug down too close to the edge and lean back on the stool. Balancing on two legs so if I fall, at least I'll have earned it. You know my name, I say. Be polite. Silence. Not empty. Intent. It has weight. Like a hand on my sternum that hasn't decided whether to push or steady. I don't know what I want it to do. The dome's skin moans in the way it does when outside pressure changes. A ripple moves across the glass like something heavy shifting its sleep on the far side. For an absurd second I imagine the sky pressing its mouth to the dome and whispering to us, encouraging, unkind. The ripple passes and leaves a silvered distortion across my reflection, splitting my face in two. In one half I'm tired and smirking. In the other, I'm just tired. Who are you? I try again, softer. The frequency tips, almost a bow. A low, almost subsonic undertow rolls through the room, through me. For the length of a breath, my throat tightens as if words would stick there if I tried to use them. The undertow recedes like it decided mercy is trendy tonight. The monitor I turned off clicks to remind me it exists. The power light blinks once, green to amber, and then dies. I feel watched in the way I always do when the dome gets quiet. It's not paranoia, it's also a hobby. I check the shaft cam again. Empty. Fine. My blood gets bored if it hasn't got something to push against, so I give. It the old game, I raise my right hand and draw pictures with sound. A triangle pitched at the edge of hearing for the bass, a higher note for the peak, and a third to connect the math like a joke. The scope trace picks up my picture and nods like, yes, yes. A triangle is a triangle even when you sing it. Too easy, I tell the air. Let me try you. I open the mic and blow across it like a bottle. The reply arrives not from the radio, but from the room itself, every wire, and bracket and screw singing the same vowel, tuned one notch below comfort. It is a lovely sound. It is almost a command. The stool tips forward without my help and sets itself down. A decision made by my inner ear and the pressure at my nape. Don't. I tell nothing in particular, and there's the catch in the pitch, the smile in the word, the tiny cliff that makes the person listening want to step off it. The air approves. If this is what the news calls an unknown audio trigger, I can see how someone under it might do something they regret. Not that I would, not that I haven't. I've spent a long time teaching my voice how to sit with its hands in its lap. It's tiresome and necessary. People trust you more when you sound like you can't make them do anything. They don't know that sometimes you don't talk because you're trying not to. On the edge of hearing, Joe. Still here, I answer, and I am. Though my chest is tight, though the little creature that sleeps behind my sternum has its eyes open and is listening with hunger. If you're trying to scare me, you should know I scare badly, and then I make a sandwich. A beat that could be amusement if sound could smile. Also, I add, because jokes are how I breathe between truths, you're one consonant away from introducing yourself. My fingers find the dampener bracelet on instinct and spin it once on the bench. The filter puck shivers in a way that tells me the build is almost right. I should finish it. I should do a lot of things. Joe, says the room again. The O round, lower by a fraction, like a permission I didn't sign. Yeah, I say, suddenly too aware of my mouth, of the heat behind my teeth, of how words are just shaped breath. I hear you. The city breathes back. Somewhere down in the lower sectors, a siren stutters and cuts off as if someone put a thumb on it. The ventilators surge. The room tastes sharp. The hair along my forearms lifts again. I put the mug back on the bench and it skates half an inch, the surface, vibrating under it as if a bee had been let loose inside the wood. If you want to talk, I say, talk. It's rude to make me do all the work. Silence. Then, closer than should be possible without hardware, a human breath that's almost a laugh. Joe. I exhale through my nose and look at my reflection, which looks back at me like I'm telling a joke we both get. Fine, I say to the mirror and the air and the unseen shadow that might still be standing in a shaft 3 levels down. Have it your way, I'll be here. And then, because I can't help myself, I dial the gain a whisper higher, lean into the mic, and let the smallest smile curve around the vowel. Your turn. The knock travels down the corridor's resonant spine before it reaches my door. 3 measured taps that find the frequency of metal and lay a fingertip there. I feel it in my teeth. The ventilators are in their low cycle, so the hallway hum is a throat-sung drone, barely above a purr. Someone picked their moment. I swing the door open on the last knock. A man fills the frame without crowding it, tall, precise, carrying stillness the way some people carry a weapon. He holds up a slim badge that glints dull in the corridor light. Communications inspection, he says. Upper-level compliance. Sweep. His voice is all clean edges and trained neutrality, the kind that never betrays what it's carrying. My neck prickles anyway. The dome air does that to me when it's trying to decide whether to be storm or glass. Compliance, I echo, and lean my shoulder into the jam. You picked the right night. I'm feeling extremely obedient. His gaze drops past me to the wiring jungle. I let him look. Everyone does the staring math when they see the cabling. Why so many patch points? Why the antique rigs? Why the dampener bracelets coiled on a nail as if they were jewelry that got ideas above its station? He doesn't gawk. He inventories. May I come in? He asks. Depends, I say, stepping back before I decide not to. Are you alone, or do you count the cameras in the shaft as company? A pause slips between us, a silk ribbon drawn slow. Then, I'm alone. Brave, I tell him. Or underpaid. Come on. He crosses the threshold, bringing the corridor's cool into the warm radio musk of the room. The lamp crane above the bench throws a lemon halo over the desk, 2 microphones like mismatched. Siblings beneath it, one live, one dead, as if the room wanted to make a point. He doesn't touch anything. His hands stay easy at his sides, one finger tapping a pulse against his thigh as if to check it's still there. Close-shaved jaw. Hair too practical to be a vanity. Everything about him says field, not tower. There's a small white scar at his temple that looks like a punctuation mark placed by a hurried editor. Name? He asks. Joe, I say, because it's easier to give the truth when the truth doesn't actually answer the question you're being asked. And you? Inspector, he says without blinking. Inspector? I repeat. Must be hard to order coffee. The lamplight snags on the corner of his mouth, almost a smile that doesn't apply for a permit. Do you live alone? He asks. Do you count voices as tenants? I say, and watch his pupils jump, not much. Just enough to put a thumbprint on his discipline. Voices, he says, neutral as a wall. Some of them pay rent, some of them don't, I say, and tip my head toward the bench. You'll want to see 7.13. If he flinches, he files it under to be addressed later. He steps closer to the desk. He stands deliberately where the lamp heat won't wash his cheek. He's practiced at not being placed, which means he's been placed enough to learn from it. He points at the live mic. Turn it off. I set my fingers on the gain knob and look up at him through my lashes like a brat on a good day. Say please. His jaw works, slow and microscopic. Vikliukite. Pojaluista. He says it like it burns his mouth on the way out. I find that charming. I dial the knob down in a theatrical quarter turn, and the noise floor obliges by dipping. The room, however, does not get quieter. The hum in my bones thickens instead. Like something leaned a shoulder against my sternum from the inside. He goes very still in the way prey does when it realizes the shadows have opinions. Then he takes 2 measured breaths, and tries again. Power down the transmitter. That's not what's making you itch, I say, soft enough to be manners and not a claim. A flicker crosses his gaze. Irritation passing for weather. Transmitter, he repeats. I'll do you one better. I hook a finger under the main toggle. You can flip it. His hand comes up, careful, government clean. The back of his knuckles almost brushes my wrist as we both reach for the same steel tab. The air between our hands crackles like a thought misfiring. For a fraction of a second the dome's breath outside syncs with ours, and the lamp stutters, out, in, a single blink eclipse. His fingertip meets mine on the toggle. The field around the touch shifts, the hair along my neck registers a boundary condition and writes it in electricity. We both look at the lamp. It steadies as if embarrassed. Grounding issue, I offer. Field fluctuation, he counters. Then, to the room, off. I flip the toggle. The bench goes quiet in the ways that can be measured. In the ways that count, it does not. The sound that lives in my throat steps forward like it's tired of pretending to be furniture. He blinks once, slow, and then I watch it hit him, the tiny wince you make when a harmonics thread slides under your skin. He masks it with a cough that has too much intention to be a mistake. Inspection, he says, more to himself than to me, is not a negotiation. I tilt my head. Then why are we doing so much of it? He doesn't answer. He circles the bench instead, taking in the dead mic's cracked grill, the scribbled maps on the wall, the dampener bracelet with its ugly little filter puck. He stops at the bracelet and, without touching it, studies the solder lines. You built that, he says. No, I say. It built me. He gives me a look. I give him a smile. It helps when the room won't be quiet unless I am. Why the antiques? He asks, nodding at the rigs. New things lie politely, I say. Old ones lie in dialect. It's easier to hear where the truth begins. He hums once, which is the closest thing to admiration I think he allows with company. You know, there's been an uptick in incidents in the lower sectors. The news lady mentioned, I say. They think an audio trigger is kicking over alpha instincts. His eyes cut to mine. Do you think? We stand like that, balanced on the narrow fence between answer and invitation. I let the silence hold one extra beat, then ease a breath across my tongue, shaping it without words. The room answers me by remembering the shape I make in it. He feels it. His pupils flare like a camera compensating for sudden light. His shoulders notch tighter for a second before he unnotches them. And the muscle along his jaw asks his self-control for overtime. Sit, I say lightly, like the suggestion it is, not the command it could be. He sits. It takes him half a second to realize he did it. Then he's back up, a clean, efficient motion that keeps his dignity's knees from knocking. Color finds the bones at his throat, and then retreats. Don't, he says, and there's a thread of iron in it. I raise both hands, palms open. Then don't ask me to not exist. We look at each other. There's a conversation happening below the one we're having, in muscle and microtone, and the air's willingness to be arranged. He's good at refusing. I'm good at inviting. We could make a living at it, if the dome paid for theater. What are you, Joe? He asks, not unkindly. Good radio, I say. He glances at the dead mic. That one? Me, I say, and my voice drops a fraction without my consent, the vowel rounding like a palm against warm glass. His throat works. His hand flexes once, as if he's resisting the urge to cover his own mouth before I remake it for him. He recovers with military grace. Turn everything off, he says again. You already said please, I remind him, and reach for the gain. I turn it another hair lower. The hum in his bones answers by stepping closer to the part of him that takes orders and makes them. His breath catches at the top, just enough to put a fingerprint on it. Whatever he's here to find, he's found it. Not in the cables. Not in the housing. He looks at my throat, at the notch above my sternum, at the small pulse point that's been my metronome all my life. He looks like a man who has located the source of his problem and against his training wants to keep it. He moves closer, not all the way, just enough that the field between us recalibrates like the room is a tool we both know how to hold. Power, he says. Down. Inspector, I answer. And because I don't know why I do anything except that I like the way the world changes. When I do, I step into his reach so that when our hands meet the main toggle again, my knuckles kiss his. The lamp blinks out, pauses, and flares back like it remembered theater. His breath brushes my cheekbone, and the scent that rises from his skin is clean cotton cut with rain. The bench is quiet. The room isn't. He looks straight at my mouth as if the answer might be printed there. It's not the machines, he says. And the admission lands like a decision he will have to pay for. No, I say, almost a whisper. Koroshi ton. His gaze snaps to my eyes. We stand in that fragile humming pause where the right unwise word could tilt the room. Down the hall, the ventilators change speed. The corridor sings. In the shaft, something that might be a camera blinks. My coffee chooses this moment to remind the world of gravity, by sliding to the very lip of the bench and stopping, obedient as a dog that wants to jump. He is the first to look away, not in defeat, but in calculation. We'll need to test the lines, he says. Log your equipment. Interview. Interview. I echo. Finally. I love questions. His mouth does the almost smile again, tired and private. I'm sure you do. He turns to the door, and then, without meaning to, turns back. His eyes land on my throat again, on the place the room has learned to listen for. I feel the exact second he knows. My name is a pressure against the inside of his teeth, unsaid. Inspector, I say, and make it a courtesy. Joe, he answers, and makes it a promise. The lamp holds. The silence holds. The frequency between us writes itself, uninvited and inevitable, like a line drawn in soft graphite that none of us knows how to erase. We leave the door open to the corridor's drone, the way you leave a window cracked during a storm, a superstition about pressure. The lamp is dimmed to a bruise yellow circle over the bench. The dome glass turns us into a double exposure, me and the inspector. And our ghosts just off the pane, breathing a fraction behind. He takes the chair near the wall, not the wheeled one under the lamp. Of course he does. People who hate losing control pick furniture that doesn't move without permission. Full name, he says. Joe, I say. And let the vowel warm. His attention sharpens, a lens narrowing. Surname. I misplace it regularly. I pick up the broken speaker cone, thumb the neat tear like a soft mouth. You can leave yours with mine if you want it returned. Age. Old enough to be polite, young enough to be annoying. Origin. An interesting question, I say, and tilt the cone so light slides along its ruin. How would you like me to answer it? Geographically, legally, philosophically? Start with legally. I'm a citizen of this city under the dome, I say. I pay 2 taxes and 3 kinds of attention. He exhales once through his nose, which his voice doesn't translate as humor. Geographically. Here, I say. Because I was found here, and I am still here, and sometimes that's all the geography you get. Philosophically, he says, because of course he does. Later, I promise. I'm not warmed up enough to confess to the metaphysics of dial tones. We circle like that, question and answer with the edges filed, and under it the air learns our shapes. He writes notes on a narrow pad with a pencil that's been sharpened down to stubbornness. He doesn't look at the pad much. He looks at my mouth, my throat, the notch above my sternum like he's tracking weather through a mountain pass. Tell me what you transmit, he says. I don't, I say. Mostly I listen. On 713. On everything that sings back. Describe the equipment. I gesture with the broken cone. Point at the old rigs, antiques. They lie prettily. I put the cone down and tap the dead microphone. This one's ceremonial. For show. For the comfort of people who like to imagine sound goes where they can see it. And this? He asks. Chin flicking toward the bracelet on the bench. I touch the band with my forefinger. The homemade filter puck drinks the light like a bruise. A dampener. I wear it when the room gets too close. Who built it? I did, I say. Then, because the truth is a many-layered thing, and someone else taught my hands without asking me. His eyes dip to the solder traces. I've seen one like it, he says absently. And then looks like he regrets that the words escaped. Have you? I turn the bracelet so the clasp faces him. On someone you know? His jaw answers before his mouth can. It's a common concept. It's an uncommon comfort, I say, and slip the band over 2 fingers and back off again, the way you try a ring you're not sure you want to keep. He sets his pencil down. You know about the incidents in the lower sectors. The news thinks an audio trigger is flipping alpha instincts. Do you think an audio trigger mind's being blamed? Do you? He says. And we're back to philosophy. The dome breathes. The lamp shivers in its own skin. Somewhere inside the wiring a transformer clicks its tongue like a disapproving ant. Sit, I say, and mean nothing by it. Just habit. A word to keep the air from getting hungry. He sits. It's fast. A muscle memory that outruns sense. A body choosing a groove it doesn't admit to knowing. He's halfway into the chair before his eyes widen, before he uncoils, before he's standing again with the motion so clean it preempts humiliation. Color finds the hinge of his jaw and his throat. His pupils are wrong, and then disciplined. Don't do that, he says, and the steel in it is a hand on my ribs. My hands are already up, palms shown, peaceable. Then listen, I say, quiet enough to keep it kind, without hearing. Silence folds over us like felt. He breathes once, calibrates. I feel the adjustment like a tuning fork set against my spine. He is very good. He finds angles in himself to wedge against. I watch him reach the edge of anger, and step around it without touching the hot part. You play with fire, he says. Fire has good hearing, I say. It learns your name on the first try. Enough, he says through his teeth. Say my name properly, I answer, dropping half a tone because honesty sometimes sounds like gravity, and I'll stop. His throat jumps. My mouth goes dry. The lamp hums louder because everything in the room believes in politeness until it doesn't. What are you? He says after a second that is longer than it wants to be. Tired, I say. Hungry. Curious. A good radio. People are not radios. Then we disagree about functions and forms. He takes a step, and we find ourselves in a small country with a border made of breath. Close, has its own physics. My voice sits very obediently in my mouth and still stretches a hand toward him under the table. Don't, he says again. But there's less steel in it, and more plea. The plea does not go unheard. Then ask me what you actually want to ask, I say, almost gentle. Because his jaw muscle is going to sprain something. You want to know if I know I'm doing it. You want to know if it works on anyone else. You want to know why it feels like a hand on the back of my neck, he says, surprising both of us. We stand in the confession's afterglow, both of us pretending we didn't see the flare. Does it work on everyone? He asks, softer. No, I say. Sometimes the room answers me instead. Sometimes nothing does. Sometimes I talk to static for 3 hours, and it is so polite it never interrupts. Why me? Because you listen like something could break if you don't, I say. And that is almost too honest, so I soften it with a shrug. Because you showed up. He breathes out, and the air tastes like rain on coin. Turn off what you can, he says. Let me see if it's the wires. Inspector, I say, and because we insist on theater, we both reach for the main switch again. Our knuckles brush. A small, bright sting pops behind my ear, as if the field wanted to be a spark and couldn't afford the fuel. The lamp hiccups. The old pendulum on the shelf, salvaged from a clock that forgot time, swings exactly once and refuses to be cute again. We look at the lamp together, as if beholding a child who tried lying and got caught. Ground, he says. Sky, I say. We both smile a fraction we pretend we didn't. Power, he says. Down. Please. He swallows the word and brings it up clean. Please. I kill the bench power. The measurable noise dies. The room's other noise, as always, has its own ideas. He's watching me instead of the board now. He's mapping something he will later say is pattern recognition and not obsession. Why the bracelet, he says. When the hum climbs, I say, and leans a shoulder inside my chest. When the room starts asking me for things and forgets to say please. Who gave you the design? An uncredited source, I say. Which is true and not. Someone who thought quiet was a kindness. Someone who didn't consider what happens when you build a person around a volume knob. His mouth has opinions about that, but they're private and not for me. He reaches toward the bracelet and stops a breath short, as if the metal might be a mouth too. When did you first talk to a wall and hear it answer? I tilt my head. Always, probably. You don't notice air until someone takes it away. Close steals the forms of things. I don't mean to move, but I'm already half a step nearer, and the space between his chest and mine is geometry, not distance. The dome's skin groans. The lamp thinks about loyalty and decides to test it. Careful, I say, and the syllables skate over a slick place in the air. And then the bulb pops. It isn't dramatic. It's just loud enough to make our flinch look like choreography. Glass snows in a narrow cone. I see the shards spiraling toward my cheek the way you see a fact arriving in your life in slow motion. His hand is there first. He catches me by the wrist and yanks me in, clean and efficient. My hip meets the bench. His other hand comes up under my jaw, not choking, not even holding, just present, just firm enough to convince the world to be careful around me. Glass kisses the bench top and rings like a very small bell. A sliver skates past my ear, and tinks to rest in the brace of the old pendulum, which wobbles twice and decides to pretend it didn't notice. The room goes very quiet, the way rooms do after they've decided who they are. We're both breathing like the air matters. His hand is a warm bracket under my jaw, his thumb is a pulse on my pulse. I could step back. I don't. He could let go. He doesn't. Okay, I say. Because if I don't put a word into this space, something else will. Crisis averted. Lamps dramatic. We'll have a talk. He doesn't move for the length of a heartbeat and a half. Then his grip loosens. Not gone. Just less like a command and more like a question. Up close I can see the small scar at his temple is really too poorly sutured by a hurry. His lashes are clumped dark from the lamp's last sneeze of heat. You all right? He says, voice pitched like a bandage being unrolled. Uncut, I say. And terribly well caught. That wasn't a rescue? I tilt my head into his palm, and the room's field murmurs so softly I almost miss it. Of course it was. You did it because you're a professional. He lets his hand fall. Not all the way. His fingers trail the line of my throat like he's translating a sentence under his breath. The touch is nothing. The touch is a cathedral. It's not the machines, he says finally, the words a verdict handed down to a crowded courtroom. It's you. Yes, I say, and drop my voice half a tone so the truth arrives like a soft weight. Say my name properly, and I'll stop. The look he gives me is a door ajar at the end of a lit hall. He doesn't walk through. He knows it's there now. He steps back exactly one pace, professional again, breath filed and labeled. We're not finished, he says. Inspection, I say, and salute with 2 fingers and a smile I can't help. He glances once at the broken bulb, at the shard cupped in the old pendulum, at the bracelet with its ugly grace. Then he looks at my throat, at the small tide that lives there and has learned his rhythm. For a second his mouth shapes a round vowel that might be my name. And might be a refusal to be the kind of man who says it like that. The dome hums. The corridor drones. The frequency between us writes itself a little darker on the air and waits for what we'll do with it next. Dawn smears itself on the dome like a thumb across dirty glass. The city looks gentler when it's tired. So do we. I come back to myself with my cheek against the inspector's shoulder and the bench hard under my hip. For a second the room is all after sound. A bell that's already been rung but hasn't chosen where to place the silence. Then the world snaps into its slots. The smell of scorched filament, the sweet bitter exhale of coffee, the faint sting along my wrist where his fingers caught me. Stay with me, he says. Low and even. A voice filed smooth for fieldwork. Was planning to, I answer, and only notice how hoarse I am when the word planning scratches. He lets go like he's obeying a rule written somewhere I can't see, then breaks it halfway and steadies me by the elbow. He raids the emergency drawer for a damp cloth and presses it to the side of my neck, careful not to be careful about it. The cloth is cold enough to make my eyes water. If I wanted to kill you, he says, which is a terrible way to begin a morning, I would have done it before coffee. That's the spirit, I murmur. The cloth tracks a line down my collarbone, and the embers in the air go out one by one. Romance isn't dead under the dome after all. He huffs something that is not a laugh, but did shake hands with one once. Pulse? Present. Rowdy. I catch his wrist and lay his fingers against my throat to demonstrate. The beat under his touch finds a tempo like it's shy in public. See? Performing for guests. 68, he says automatically, then corrects himself when it slams to 74 out of spite. 74. You make a good monitor, I tell him. We could paint little LEDs on your knuckles. He removes his hand like it weighs more than usual, and gestures toward the tiny kitchen corner, which is really just a counter, a single burner, and the coffee machine that thinks it's my wife. Sit. Drink. I can stand and sip, I say, and do both badly. He takes the mug away from the bench edge and puts it in the safe square he's mentally taped off for things that should not jump. We move around each other in the warm drift of a too-early kitchen. The dome light fractures itself over the window, so the steam from the mug looks like a small weather system. One of the spare bulbs digs its way out of a drawer like a mole and blinks, which is how bulbs ask to be chosen. He climbs the stool, replaces the lamp, tests the switch. The new light holds, sensible and plain. Field stabilized, he says, as if congratulating the bench on behaving. I lean my hip against the counter and sip carefully. The first swallow hits like the word yes. The second reminds me I'm a throat attached to a person, and not a person attached to a throat. Better? He asks. Less echo, I say. More me. He nods like there's a checklist somewhere, and this was a box that needed a tick. We should calibrate your array. If we damp the room response and tune the antenna narrow, the load on you drops. By on me you mean inside me, I say. And pretend the mug is excellent cover. Let's do it. Before I get sentimental about stray frequencies, we set up in comfortable choreography, because some partnerships learn the steps before they learn the names. He takes the external lead, hands moving with a practiced calm that makes old metal want to be good. I stand by the mass control and bring the needle up in tiny allowances, listening for where the room chooses to argue. Dawn licks the edge of the dome. Our shadows move like they're doing a slow demonstration of trust. Breathe, he says, and it is both advice and measurement. I am, I say, but I make it tidier. The gain swings. The hum answers. When I exhale, he nods. There. Hold. Again. I let my breath find the same steps as last time, and it does. Delighted to be praised. He watches the needle, then not the needle, then me, by habit. When I inhale too sharp, the band wobbles and kisses a harmonic that tastes like a struck coin. Easy, he murmurs. You first, I say, and the corner of his mouth acknowledges the point. We ride the line like that, my lungs a metronome he can see. Each time I catch his eyes, there's something like the beginning of language, waiting there. And I do not speak it because I want it to learn my face first. Hold the floor at 70129, he says. Bring the mast 3 degrees west. 3 degrees west, I repeat. And the words behave like a vow. The room eases a notch. The pressure that had been leaning its shoulder into my chest relents like a friend, who agrees to sit a little farther away on the couch so you can both think. I draw a little diagram with my breath, triangle, circle, and the scope trace nods like we are finally drawing the same picture. See? I say, pleased in a way that warms the stubborn places. A marriage by frequency. Very modern. He looks at me over his shoulder, amused against orders. If you're proposing, you should know I'm notoriously late to ceremonies. I'd stream the vows as a courtesy, I say. An audience deserves what an audience is owed. You're not an audience device, he says, and returns to the panel before the words can do too much. But the sentence hangs in the steam like a ribbon. I answer into my mug. We'll argue taxonomy later. We reset the last of the anchors, and let the antenna settle into its new posture. I feel it like a posture in my body, as if my spine has decided it is done apologizing. I put the mug down, and the cup ring it makes is clean. Your load should be lighter, he says, and then, as if his mouth bypassed his sense, I don't like seeing it heavy. Inspector, I say, softer than a joke. Careful. Your compassion is showing. He opens his mouth to deny it, and closes it for the same reason. The room appreciates the restraint. We should check the archived lines, he says briskly. If there's a legacy signal, it'll be in the old logs. You mentioned a teaching hand. I want to see it. In the tech closet, I tell him, and lead the way to the short metal door by the shaft. The light inside always makes a sound like a small sun waking. Dust motes spin in it like the universe trying to remember a dance. The server stack hums in the agreeable key of yesterday. Boxes of cartridges squat on the bottom shelf, labeled in a handful of hands. I pull the one that should not exist anymore, because that's where truth likes to hide. Careful, he says, a habit, As I slot the first cartridge into the reader, the old terminal flickers with all the dignity of a retired actor finding their light. A green cursor blinks. The index coughs up titles. Resonant Node 713, Series Echolalia. Protocol Drafts. Initials Joe. My mouth goes dry in a way coffee cannot fix. Joe, he reads, a steadying voice that says we'll think first and suffer after. Could be anything. Could be me, I say, and the word me does not sit right on my tongue. As if it has to go around something else to reach daylight. I select the first file before I can decide not to. The audio boots. The room holds its breath for us because it is polite and because it also wants to hear. A woman speaks. Her voice is precise and affectionate the way a scalpel is affectionate toward its line. Resonant Node 7.13. Series, Echolalia. The smile is audible. My boy. We'll teach you to listen first, then to speak. I don't know her. My bones do. My stomach remembers a place to be afraid that my brain never learned. Dr. Selwyn, the inspector says softly, and his hand finds the doorway as if the metal needs someone to lean on. We had a briefing clip once. She's confident, I say, because the words are there for me, and I don't want to leave him alone with the field. Instrumentalist, kind as a method. The recording continues. Instructions, calibrations, little terms of endearment, that only grow teeth if you put your face too close to them. My boy, she says again, and the room unhelpfully tells me I have been that boy my entire life. I reach for the terminal and miss, because my hand has decided it needs to be busy with the physical act of clenching. Joe, the inspector says. My name wrapped in gauze. Breathe. I am, I tell him. And learn for the first time that the sentence can be both true and insufficient. The file runs on into a sequence about dampeners, about bracelets like mine. The design is almost identical. The note in the margin reads, for when the room comes too close. I hear my own voice make a sound I did not give it permission to make. It's not a sob. It's the intake of someone hearing the shape of their own outline for the first time. Hey, he says, and the word lands on my shoulder like a practiced hand. You're here. With me. Now. I nod because I can do that without talking. The terminal scrolls. The cursor blinks in calm pity. Something changes. Not in the air. In him. I feel him turn toward the door, preparing to do the right thing by someone not me, the way people with bosses must. The thought becomes a tension in his breath, and then, I hear it. Not through the speaker, not through the room. Don't go, I say, inside his head, and only realize I've said it when his mouth parts. And his eyes stutter open like he's walked into a glass door no one warned him about. We stare at each other, startled by the same animal. He recovers first, because he is trained to. He glances down the hall where the corridor hum is pretending not to listen, then back at me. His cheeks hold more color than the tech closet light provides. Was that? I didn't mean to, I say. The apology lands as heat under my skin. I meant, never mind what I meant. I didn't root it. Joe. He tests my name like he's checking a bridge. Say something. Out loud or otherwise. I try for humor because humor has been faithful to me in worse rooms. Because apparently we offer both channels now. Premium experience? He puts a hand over his eyes for half a second, then drags it down his face in a move so human the room wants to send it flowers. I heard you, he admits, like confessing to theft. Not through the set. In here. He taps his temple. In a whisper. Don't go, I repeat out loud this time. Because if I'm going to embarrass myself, I want documentation. He looks acutely uncomfortable, which means the honesty did its work. I wasn't planning to, he says, and then, lower, not anymore. Something unknots under my sternum. It makes a small sound only I can hear. The terminal cursor blinks. Dr. Selwyn, like all efficient ghosts, pauses neatly while we have our scene. My voice, I say into the little hush, is an emergency exit for other people's instincts. Great, I'm a fire siren. You are not a siren, he says immediately, with a finality that pins the words where I can see them. You're a person. I smile because if I don't, I'll put my forehead against the server rack and we'll both have to pretend it was about a screw I dropped. Suppose, I say after a beat, and the room records the wobble in the syllables for its files. I'll allow it. We listen to the rest of the clip. The instructions escalate. A kind voice turning into a system. My name, the one I thought I chose, keeps appearing as initials in the margins. Proof some earlier hand made me tidy. When the file ends, the tech closet exhales. The server light goes back to being a small sun. He looks at the door like it's a road his orders live on. Then he doesn't take it. Let's back up the logs, he says. Catalog. Carefully. Carefully, I repeat. And the echo is not a trick this time. It is agreement. We carry the cartridges to the bench, side by side. The dawn has become day on the other side of the dome, and the city has remembered its appetite. I thread the reader. He labels. When our hands brush, it is just hands. When our eyes meet, we both look away too late. On the screen, a new directory line appears because I make it, 7.14, draft. His gaze catches it. He doesn't ask. I don't explain. There will be time to decide whether the future is a higher note. For now, we sit in the warm spill of the lamp we haven't angered yet, drinking coffee that stopped pretending to be good 20 minutes ago, and we build the kind of quiet that asks permission and waits for the answer. Outside, the patrol sirens run their routes. Inside, the room hums a sober key. In the space between my mouth and his mind, a line has been strung. It does not feel like a leash. It feels like a bridge. The archive terminal wakes like a tired animal, green phosphor washing the dark, fan a little too proud of its own noise. The progress bar pulses in a slow heartbeat as the cartridge mounts. Someone once decided patience should be visualized as a crawl, and the machine obeys. Ready, I say, because sometimes the lie helps the truth find the door. Play it, he answers, standing close enough that the light climbs his throat and makes a column of it. His hands are empty. That's how you know he's holding something he can't put down. The screen spits a header and then knits a picture out of noise. Dr. Selwyn sits in a frame that wasn't built to flatter. Hair braided short for work, mouth quick and controlled. She wears the kind of tired you borrow from the future. Resonant node 713, she says, and the fondness in the sentence is a scalpel's fondness. Series, echolalia. If he ever fully recognizes his function or origin, standard procedure is immediate decommission. She says it like a safety warning on a child's toy. The fan changes pitch. The cursor waits, polite. In the corner of the screen, a timestamp I don't want to parse burns like a little sun. If he recognizes, I start. And then my voice fails me, which is unfair. It's done such heavy lifting lately. Her voice goes on, as if she has the room and the world and my attention all sworn to good behavior. The carrier is a control vector. A compassionate one, ideally, she adds, which is exactly the kind of kindness I expect from a system. But if the vector destabilizes, if self-awareness leads to recursive amplification, the humane response is swift termination. Alpha mitigation remains the prime directive. I laugh. It's a small, thin thing, an exhale that looks for a roof to hit and doesn't find one. There it is, I say. That's why I don't sleep without a radio. Turn it off and I'm not there. Easy cleanup. Quiet floors. Joe, he says, like a bandage being lifted so the skin can breathe. You're here. Currently I agree, and sit back on the stool as if my bones want to know what a surface is for. The light glazes the bench. The fan hums its own lullaby. Sometimes I think, if I'm just a signal, maybe the body is the speaker. Nice wood, good resonance, replaceable. He doesn't reach for me with his hands. He reaches with his voice. Your heart isn't a speaker, he says, quiet and steady. It answers me. It's almost rude, the way that sentence finds the middle of me and makes itself a seat. I let my head tilt, as if gravity got flirtatious. The terminal spits another clip. Selwyn again, brighter this time, mid-experiment. He's learning cadence, she says to the camera, delighted. He'll be a balm for the worst of them, and they won't even know who to thank. Balm. I test the word and don't like the way it tastes. I've been a lot of things, but I never thought I'd be a topical ointment. Don't do that. He says softly. What, I say, smiling too hard at the screen, make jokes when the floor is opening? It's a hobby. No, he says. Make yourself a function when I'm talking about a person. The fan ticks. The dome beyond the window could be breathing. I realize he's moved, not much, just enough that his shoulder and my shoulder would know each other if we let them. His pocket comm cracks the room like a whip. The polite violet lead turns surgical white. He looks down like a man reading the weather. When he looks up, he's a fraction farther away. Someone has stepped into his skin and is wearing it. Say it, I tell him. Because I would rather have a sentence than the silence he's considering. He swallows. The comm is still in his hand. Confirmation received, he recites, and the rhythm is not his. If carrier origin is non-human or engineered and self-awareness is confirmed, isolate and terminate the node. Containment deemed insufficient. Proceed. I could be angry. I could be brave. What I am is tired. Do what you have to do, I say. I'm a tool. His face rearranges itself around a refusal. For a beat I think he'll swallow the calm. Instead he lets it lower to his thigh, not answering on the channel, answering here. No, he says. And it comes from a place below policy. You're my choice. The room doesn't know what to do with that, and tries to be helpful by changing the shape of the air. The hum comes up under the floorboards, delicate and disastrous. The lamp's halo bruises. The progress bar on the terminal crawls 1 pixel and stops. As if the machine is afraid to move in a room like this. Something gives in me, not dignity. The part that keeps the volume knob neat. It slips, and the noise pours through the gap like the ocean finding a cut. The frequency lifts off its number and climbs. Not vicious but inevitable. Joe. His voice is sudden close. His palm finds my shoulder. Then my jaw, not controlling, locating. Stay with me. Wish I could, I say, which is unhelpful, and the world answers by tilting 1/2 degree. The dome skin groans the long note of pressure change. And for one impossible instant the city below becomes very quiet. Sirens stagger, alarms cough and forget their sentences. The bruise of alpha unrest softens like someone put a wet towel over a fire. I feel huge. I feel empty. I feel like my mouth is a door and the world wants in. The terminal catches enough breath to spit one more line of Selwyn. Voice too calm. If he recognizes himself, she says. Final as a verdict. Destroy the carrier and scrub the line. Mercy requires discipline. White floods the sound. The frequency, mine, finds every bracket and screw and turning in the room and plucks them all. The old pendulum on the shelf swings. The coffee mug skates an inch and stops like it remembered manners at the edge. He steps into the center of it. There's a kind of bravery that looks like stillness. He has it. He brings his hand to my throat and sets it there, not squeezing, not pinning. Just placing a human weight on the human place. His other hand finds my collarbone, anchors. His chest is close enough that I can feel the way he refuses to run. Listen to me, he says, and there's iron and prayer in it. Not the noise. Me. It's loud, I tell him, and I don't know if I said it out loud or across that bridge we strung by mistake. I know, he says. Say my name. The city holds its breath to see what I do. The dome sighs. The lamp flickers in a rhythm that wants to be a word. Say it, he asks again, quieter. Say my name, Joe. I find his face. It's very close and ordinary and brave. I try to shape a vowel and it fills with static like a lung with smoke. Xavier, I say, because my mouth is poorly educated when panicking. He huffs out an unbelieving laugh that is mostly love and more discipline. Try again. Javier, I breathe, and when I put the syllables down they land like rocks in a river, breaking the current. The hum wavers. The pressure makes a choice to be elsewhere. He doesn't move his hands. He is a fact I can use. Once more. Javier, I say, and this time the vowel rounds like a home you enter instead of a command you dodge. The field buckles. The lamp's filament quits the drama and decides to be a citizen. The pendulum gives up its performance, and is wood again. The frequency drops back into its number like a bird finding the branch it missed. The silence that follows has weight and forgiveness in it. The fan returns to work as if it never stopped. Somewhere below the dome, a siren remembers how to be annoying. He doesn't take his hands away. His palm at my throat is not a leash. It's a border. It says where I end and where the noise cannot enter without showing its papers. Hi, I say, which is unsophisticated and exactly what I have. Hi, he says, and removes one hand slow, leaves the other until my pulse volunteers a normal. We don't move for a while. The terminal timer tries to be helpful by finishing the file. Selwyn's face freezes mid-instruction, mouth on the edge of its name. Let me see your orders, I say, when I can be funny again without breaking. I'm nosy. He turns the comm screen to me. It is all clean text and ruthless absence of adjectives. The words terminate node are highlighted, as if someone thought a highlighter made murder administrative. I take the comm, hold it over the bench light, and then hand it back. Because burning things is theatrical and difficult, under a dome. Delete it, I say. Or better, corrupt it. His mouth checks with his conscience. Then his thumb does a dance I've never learned, and the message becomes a line of boxes, and then it becomes nothing. He doesn't stop there. He reaches into whatever system they built to make him obedient, and he changes a flag. A key. A marker that would have told someone where I am. He scrubs it. "We'll rewrite this," he says without looking up. All of it. From the window, the city, a sea of small insistences, lights shaking like they've all just remembered their own names. He moves to the glass, and I go with him because I don't want him to decide a new distance. The dome spreads us above everyone else like two fingerprints. "You hear that?" I ask. He listens. For once, we hear the same thing. A quiet at the edges of the loud. A reprieve so brief it could be coincidence, and we decide it isn't because hope is also a system. Selwyn thought mercy required discipline, I say, and my breath fogs a small imperfect circle on the glass. Maybe mercy requires choice. He looks at me through the reflection of me in the window. He looks like a man who has let go of a rope he was supposed to hold, and found that his hands prefer other work. "Choice then," he says. "You know this is going to be a problem," I offer, because optimism is accurate when it's properly tempered. "You just, what's the term? Insubordinated yourself." He smiles, the first real smile I've seen him with. It takes up less room than I expected, and more meaning. "I chose," he says, and the word sits perfect in the small circle of fog my breath made. "And I'll keep choosing." I feel the laugh before I hear it, the kind with water behind it. "If I'm a signal," I say, "and the body's only a speaker, I should warn you I get loud at parties." "Good," he says. "We'll need volume." We stand there with our reflection selves under our real ones, the dome making a double exposure of us again. The city is waking fully now. Vendors opening shutters, patrols clicking back into their loops, somebody dropping a crate in a way that announces the end of night. Behind us, the terminal waits, cursor blinking, patient as a question mark. I go back and type a line under Selwyn's directive. It's not a real command. Just a note that makes me feel like I am writing a small law for our small country. Override, pending. Operator, JH, action, recode. He reads it and nods like it's binding. He pockets the dead order comm and leaves his palm on the bench next to mine, not touching available. "We'll back up the useful," he says. "We'll make a new directory. 7.14, I say. Because numbers are also prayers. A step higher. A different song." He doesn't ask why. He just says, "Okay." And the okay settles in the room like furniture we'll both use. The fan hums. The progress bar finishes. Outside, the dome clenches and then relaxes as the day decides to be ordinary. Inside, the hum finds a kinder key and stays there because someone asked it to and someone else answered. The workshop looks like it finally forgave me. New insulators sit in neat rows along the mast like sensible epaulets. Cables run in modest braids instead of the old jungle. Someone who cares about me tucked them with patient hands. On the sill, a squat succulent stares at the dome as if it's calculating its odds. The tag stuck into the soil reads, in blocky handwriting, "Do not kill this one, Joe." Underneath, smaller, "Mara." Mara had dropped it off with a clatter and a snort, declared our wiring not bad for 2 drama, magnets, and threatened to report us to the building if we made the dome sing again. Then she'd hugged Javier without admitting the hug was happening and told me to hydrate like I was an engine. She left spare fuses, and a Tupperware of something that might be soup if we believed hard enough. On the peg next to the door hangs a slate-gray apron with stenciled letters. I run on low latency. I pretend it's a joke. It is also a reminder. We're quiet this morning. The right kind. The kind with room for a second cup. Javier moves around the kitchen corner like he was born in small, efficient spaces. The coffee is not good, but it is steady, and the machine has decided to act like a citizen. "Pulse?" he asks, which has become equivalent to good morning. "Present," I say, and lay his fingers over my wrist because it feels better when the answer is mutual. "Calm." Slightly smug. His mouth makes the shape of agreement. Calm is acceptable, smug can stay. We calibrate each other in micropauses now, the way people learn the other's cadence without thinking about choreography. If my breath goes shallow on a vowel, he waits until I finish the syllable before he answers. If his jaw tightens as a reflex, I make the next sentence a rounded thing with no edges to catch on. It's a small art. We practice. "You ready?" he asks, nodding toward the bench. The old rigs gleam with the obstinate handsomeness of antiques that remember being useful. The dampener bracelet rests beside them, same ugly charm, new heart. He built a filter into the puck that clicks one notch softer than my worst nights. The leather band is longer now, it fits like an accessory on purpose, not a prescription. As I'll ever be, I say. Which is almost... He raises an eyebrow. I switch the apron over my head because Mara would show up out of nowhere if I didn't. The fabric smells faintly of detergent and new routines. Let's make a decision, I say, and the room sits up. I want 7.14. Half a hertz higher, he says, as if rehearsing the line to make it part of the script. A different song. A choice, I say, and we understand each other without looking at the archive closet. We'll keep 7.13 mapped. We won't live there. He nods once. We'll need a new crystal. He sets the small velvet tray on the bench like it's a ring. The replacement quartz gleams with the modest courting light of useful things. His hands move with that precise patience I've come to recognize. The patience of a man who intends to keep what he keeps. He shows me each step like we're writing an oath, not secret, just ours. The mast breathes its long, agreeable creak when we seat the new stone. Your turn, he says. I fit the dampener band around my wrist. The click is a soft consent. The field hum noses at the threshold, and then remembers its manners. I bring the gain up a whisper, and wait. My throat stays an organ instead of a weapon. Okay, I tell it. We're going to try something stupid and careful. Javier takes the external lead and turns the tiniest dial, 3 millimeters from where it always wanted to be. His fingers don't shake. Mine try not to. Breathe, he says. Because that's the one command I obey without complaint. I do. The tone we coax is shy, newly born notes are, but it finds us. 7.1. 4 isn't a cliff like its older sibling. It feels like a platform with railings. Like you could stand there and watch a storm and decide not to step in. The scope's trace stabilizes into a beautiful, unshowy line. I can almost hear Mara saying finally. The dome light slants through the window and draws a soft rectangle across my knuckles. Hold it, Javier murmurs, watching the dial as if it could change out of spite. There, I echo. And let a smile occupy my mouth because it can, not because it has to steer anything. Hi. He glances from the scope to me, and whatever he was about to say detours into a small smile of his own. It is gentle and baffled in the way joy always is when it discovers it wasn't theoretical. Test? He asks. Test, I agree. And touch the live mic with one fingertip the way you greet a skittish animal. Old habit tries to make my tongue a key. I let the habit pass through me like a train I'm not boarding. If I start broadcasting again, I whisper. Promise you won't pounce. His eyes warm the way the lamp warms the bench. Only if you say my name the same way. I shouldn't grin at that. I do anyway. Javier. The vowel lands kind, not hungry. The feel doesn't reach for his spine. My pulse doesn't sprint to impress. The room hums in a sober key, like a friend who knows where the exits are but doesn't mention them every minute. Again, he says, because repetition makes a ritual. Javier, I say, and the mic takes it like a story, not a spell. He exhales as if he's been holding his breath since the archive told us what I was and what I didn't have to stay. He doesn't pounce. He leans his hip to the bench next to mine, and lets his arm brush mine because we get to do that now. Status? He asks, looking at the panel. I check the little square of LEDs that we taught to be honest. The top one shifts from amber to a quiet green, and holds. 7.14, I say. Stable. We don't whoop. We also don't pretend it isn't a miracle that looks like a competent Tuesday. I set the mic down, palm flat to the bench the way you touch a creature who has decided not to bite you today. Outside the city throws its early clatter against the dome, vendors opening metal mouths, a delivery, drones sulking at a crosswind, the low bicker of patrols who made it through the night. Under all of it, I hear a bit less flinch. The edges are softer. Maybe coincidence. I take it anyway. Mara pops her head through the door without knocking, as promised. You look alive, she announces, then squints at the scope. And domesticated. I approve. Do not make me regret the plant. We'll feed it a schedule, I assure her, then nod at the apron. See? Compliance. She snorts. If that succulent dies, I'm taking the bracelet. She eyes the leather band on my wrist. Accessorizing now, are we? Function disguised as form, Javier says, which is his way of praising anything. Integrated filter, lower threshold. Sexy, Mara says flatly, then softens. It suits you. Thank you, I say, and mean for the fuses, for the scolding, for reminding us the dome isn't a stage. She leaves us with a wave meant for the air. We stand in the small silence after someone kind exits. I realize I'm swaying just a little, the way you do when the ground decides it will keep you. Javier catches the motion with a sidelong glance. You okay? He asks. I think I'm regular, I say, trying the word on like a coat. Talking without moving furniture, hearing without handing out assignments. It's unsettling. Unsettle slowly, he says. Plenty of time. I turn the bracelet around my wrist, until the clasp sits right. The metal kisses my skin and stays cool. What does plenty mean for us? He considers. He has started answering as himself and not as a committee. We'll keep the logs. We'll publish what helps. We'll misfile the rest until misfiling becomes history. And us, I say, because the word is both a technical problem and not one. He looks at the panel, then at me, then at the window where the dome makes a polite mirror of us. I'll learn your pauses, he says. You'll learn mine. Symmetry, I say. Resonance, he says. And does not apologize for the metaphor. I drape the cable slack in a careful loop and pretend I'm not feeling sentimental about a coil of wire. Do you want to do the honors? He nods toward the master panel like a priest toward a font. You started it. Then I'll finish this part, I say. The switch is a small thing. It isn't even dramatic. But when I press it, the panel draws breath and the status line clears its throat and says what we asked it to say. 7.1. 4. Stable. We don't kiss the panel. We are not that sentimental. Javier watches the green hold, and the muscles at the corners of his eyes relax. Into the face he wears when he's not preparing for an order he won't follow. Breakfast? He says. Are we capable of that? I ask, dubious. As a species. We can attempt toast, he says. I can fail honorably. He ties the apron on me like he's practicing a claim neither of us needs to articulate and neither of us fears anymore. I pour coffee that has forgiven its own taste. He hands me a plate with 2 pieces of bread that charmed their way through heat and came out edible. We eat leaning against the bench, looking out at the city like we own a tiny corner of it. The succulent glows faintly stubborn on the sill. A patrol siren bleats once, short and embarrassed, like it remembered it had something else to do. You hear that? I ask. He cocks his head. Quieter. Not quiet, I say. No, he agrees. But less brittle. We stand in that, and it feels like we found a pocket in the day where the air is the right size. Will you? I start. Then decide to be brave in a useful way. Stay? I already did, he says, because he is very good at the simple sentences that matter. He bumps my shoulder with his. Try the mic again. I pick it up, slow. The old reflex nips and then sits when I tell it to. I lean in, as if confiding to a friend, not commanding a room. If I start broadcasting again, I say, promise you won't pounce. He sets his palm flat beside mine on the bench, a warm anchor disguised as nothing. Only if you say my name the same way. Javier, I say. For the joy of it, it's only a word. It's not only a word. The field holds. The green light stays green. The city hums in a key that doesn't ask me to fix it. He doesn't move away. I don't either. We let the morning put itself together around us and decide not to change the parts that finally fit. This time, the voice is mine.